Oh, I'm on. Hello. All right, so let's see if the audio levels are right. Let's see if all the little things work. So, card games, let's go. All right, so yeah, fuck it. Well, everything is doing it live here. So, so what I did is no intro. That's too much technical ability for me, inanimate walrus. So, what I'm doing here is I'm doing is I just wrote like a little bit of notes, and I'm going to be doing 3-hour lobby screen. Is I'm going to be playing card game again and just sort of reading through a little bit of notes that I'm doing and responding to chats, while I'm doing it. What is CODA? Council or Community for Open Debates on the Holocaust. That's CODA. So, what other games do you like playing? I like playing lots of games. So, I think what I'll be doing here is I'll be doing, instead of doing the base game, I'll just be going straight into the KC's mod here. Alright, so any new information drop about the Holocaust since last stream? Not really. Not really. Anyone ever play Cultist Simulator? No, just go to university. So what I've been, I guess, sort of thinking about is like the analogy of like a CPU versus an ASIC, or application-specific integrated circuit. So if you guys have know about like 16-bit systems.
So just do it! Make your dreams come true!
That is too loud. Okay. That is way too loud. I have a conspiracy theory. You are a manly baddest hero on YouTube, but with a voice changer. You have the same way of talking. I can't read that fast. Let me go through that. Where are the chats? I have a conspiracy theory. You are a manly baddest hero on YouTube, but with a voice changer. You have the same way of talking, just he has a deeper voice. You both love playing this Inscription game. Well, there you go. Like, it's a good game. It's a fun game. So, are you willing to debate the Holocaust? And did you see the Mark Webber versus Michael Shermer? Yes, I did see the Michael Shermer. And Michael Shermer was basically doing a whole lot of convergence. Like, he was just doing all convergence all the time on that. Get over here. I don't know a way to make that announcement less loud. I think the problem is I just uploaded a clip that was too loud. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to take that off for now. It's too loud until I can figure that out off stream. So, yeah. So, all right. So back to what I was thinking about. Like, there's... Like, when looking at the left versus the right, people talk about the left versus the right, and one thing that I more sort of equate it to is CPU versus ASIC, or application-specific integrated circuit. And that is like in old console games, like the 8-bit, 16-bit, even when you got into the 32-bit consoles. And I guess now you're getting into real 64-bit consoles. You had application-specific integrated circuits. That is, you didn't have a GPU. You had like specialized hardware for like the ASIC. It was called an ASIC. You didn't have GPUs until later. And so I think in all animals, they mostly have ASICs. But humans. What's so special about humans is that they start to have this CPU, a kind of generalized, abstract intelligence. And you can, of course, everything's a matter of degree. You can always say a distinction between a CPU and an ASIC are of degree, not of kind. Or you You can be like a real butt and point to like FPGAs to break the analogy, like whatever, man. But
Юкер подчеркивание гаммер $10 словит и шоу. Эвера
Okay.
уигдает Севенфалькс.
What the heck was that? Was that a chat? Was that a donation in Russian? I don't know what that was. If you pick like the Russian voice, I think they say it in Russian. Joker Gamer XXX, love the show every weekday at 7, folks. No, it's not every weekday at 7. It's planning to be every other day, but not the 31st because I'm taking a trip out to a place that I do not want to go. Anyway, so let me start doing what I'm doing here. Need to burn out these ringworms here. This is the Mantis deck on like the skull. They all skulls run on Casey's mod. So, and we get like the annoying sigil. We get all sorts of horrible things. Are we gonna burn it out? Nope, we're not burning it out. So we're keeping that ringworm then. So, and like let's say, take something like I think this is most visible, like the CPU ASIC thing in humans when you talk about like sexual desires. You know, humans have sexual desires just like animals, but because of like these ridiculous CPUs that humans have, I just forgot the annoying sigil. Oh, whatever. But because of the ridiculous CPUs that humans have, you have you get all sorts of inflated and all sorts of drama about like sexuality in humans. And you know, and of course for an animal, for example, like an animal will never talk about liking food. Like he does, he enjoys it as much as you do, probably more. But an animal is not going to really talk a whole lot about food. You know, forget the lack of vocal cords, you know, or the lack of his like language processing abilities in the ASICs. Am I going to lose on the first fight in this? That would be embarrassing. Wow, that was embarrassing. So, like, forget the lack of vocal cords, you know. Like, my point is that even if your dog had, like, these abilities, like, a dog wouldn't describe to you how much he enjoys a steak he's having, right? Because he doesn't have the CPU for that. And so you can see, like, there's a lot of animal functions, quote unquote, in humans that are given this human veneer. And like this can actually be a lot more complicated than that. Like humans have sort of a hardware for morality, like things that are wrong, right? That they don't have to be told to be wrong. For example, like lying, stealing, you know, and stealing, of course, implies an innate conception of ownership, cheating on a partner, and of course, just hard violence. So, you know, so you have these sort of innate, like native morality that people have. And, you know, and so the like one example of the malleability of this morality, though, is the decline in sort of the increase in aversion to hard violence. So, like, I read an analysis of the Works Project Administration slave interviews. And they, of course, told all sorts of impossible stories, like an impossible number of slaves claiming to have had a white mother or a white father. Go with 2 cost and 2 cost. But what I also found was interesting is that they looked at predictions of slaves voluntarily leaving their former master after the war. And of course, those who had a choice to stay on the plantation or leave, something like 80% chose to stay on as quote unquote, free labor, whatever that meant. Probably meant a pay cut, going from slave to free labor. You probably, oh, you're free, I can fire you, I can pay you less. Like, yeah, that's. But the biggest predictor of whether or not a slave would stay or leave was the quality of the food. In fact, the quality of the food explained more than half of the variance in the decision to leave. And so, people all concerned about corporal violence and corporal punishment of slaves themselves didn't really care. So that's an example of changes in conceptions to violence over time. So, and what this points to is, two things. One, that the slaves were lying in terms of how much bad stuff was done to them by slave owners. We know they were lying about how many of them were the sons and daughters of slave owners. So we know they're systemically lying about that, because they're saying something that's literally impossible. But it also points to a change in the conception of how violence is treated and how violence is considered. Let's look at this. Do I want to go 3? Okay, I'm having technical issues here. Oh, never mind. Let's see, it's popping up on the screen. Oh, I missed it. I'm going to read all the pay chats. Anonymous, white people don't know how to season their food. White people invented seasoning their food. White people invented American spices. So, and I think a similar example of this was seen at the end of World War II at a camp I think it was Natzweiler. The camp at Natzweiler, where at the end of the war, the inmates chose to go, a great number of the inmates chose to go back to their German captors that were supposedly running these horrible, terrible camps, when they were brought over to American custody, but they chose to go back over to German custody. So, but back to slavery. So there's an additional explanation of that, which is that corporal violence and physical punishment was not viewed as negatively as it is today. And this is something that I noticed when I moved from Kansas to California, is that in high school was just how deadly serious in California, all the school administration, they took fights. They took fights really, really seriously, and it was kind of weird. It was kind of a culture shock. You'd have all sorts of counseling getting involved, and suspensions, and just a little fist fight. Good, we got rid of the one ringworm. So, that was a major difference. That was a big culture shock. So that's an example of malleability of morality by sort of the CPU, but the ASIC, we'll call it sort of the ASIC part of the human brain, is far less malleable and just sort of does what it does. So take the matter of legalizing homosexuality. The thing about that, you can spin all sorts of yarns about that. And like you can talk about consequences and blah blah blah. But the truth is, people just don't like homosexuality because it's gross to most people. Right? It just is. It's just gross. And people don't like gross things. And when they try to make other people in their group, when they have a group, people try to make other people in their group stop doing gross things. Right? It's immoral because it's gross. Like that's basically it. And that's all like you really need there. We are... Man. I'm playing like crap. See, this is the difficulty of streaming. Is that I end up not being able to follow the game very well. So like, there was an example that I saw said by this guy, Jonathan Haidt. Now, I don't really agree with Jonathan Haidt on, on that much. I'm just going to take it easy. But he has like an example. His overall thesis I disagree with, but he had a little thought experiment that I thought was very interesting and very revealing. And the thought experiment was pretty simple. Let's say you have a man and he has a frozen chicken. And he thaws out the frozen chicken and he looks at the frozen chicken and says, you know what, I'm gonna have sex with this frozen chicken. Right? And you can imagine what that would look like and the experience of all that. Or if that doesn't sufficiently gross you out, think of something else gross or whatever. Is that immoral? Is what this man is doing immoral? Now, if your ASIC, sort of the hardware functions of your brain say yes. They say yes, that's greatly immoral. What that man is doing, it's immoral because it is gross. Now, if you're like big brain philosophy man, you might go, well, nobody was harmed. I mean, the chicken's already dead. If he catches salmonella, well, that's his choice. That's a consequence of his choice. Who are we to judge? Blah, 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 right? That's what the CPU rationalizations are doing. And basically, that is the first step towards what I would call, not with a capital C, but a small c cult. Like thinking, in those sorts of ways is the primitive of cults, we'll say. I don't need to do anything. So I call things cults a lot, and I don't mean that necessarily as a pejorative. Anything you might call like a religion or an ideology, I think that's not a good thing to distinguish. Like, I think it's almost irresponsible to distinguish them. Because when you deconstruct these things, when you really drill down on like any, like what is tagged a religion or tagged an ideology, what they have in common is some sort of deviation from like the ASIC, or some people would call it baseline, right? And I think the term base, like people talk about the term base, but it's like they don't really know exactly what they mean by that, but they know it when they see it. I think a good solid definition of base would be, or based, would be unsocialized. Like, what would people think if they weren't taught anything about something? What would they think about, women's rights if they were never told anything about it? If they just grew up in the woods, came out, and now they're being told about, like, all these women should have rights or whatever, right? What would they think? It would probably be like, no, why? Why don't we just have all the rights? We're men, we're bigger, we're stronger, right? We're better at organizing, competitive things. Let's just us make all the decisions? Why are we letting them make the decisions? That's stupid, right? That would be a based quote unquote thing, but that's typically how men thought in most places and times, and that was that's, and you have to be sort of conditioned out of that. And so that is, and how do you get conditioned out of that? You get conditioned out of it by like all these philosophies and rights and stuff, which is just a deviation from base, or I like to call the application specific integrated circuit of the brain, or the ASIC of the brain. So on here, like, I guess I need to be careful when talking about Christianity, because of the religious revival that's going on this site here. Do cost. So because I'm talking about Christianity, I want to make it clear. When I talk about Christianity, I'm talking about it as a cultic phenomena, not what the doctrine really says, not what is true Christianity, which, from my point of view, is of per se zero import. Now, it may be important if the formal doctrine influences the cult phenomena in any way, to the extent, for example, the writings of Karl Marx may have some impact on what went on in the Soviet Union. Some. So it can be important if it has, like, influence on the cult phenomena, but the phenomena itself is all we care about. So, like, this thing we call communism, right? There's a lot of talk about communism, whatever, and people will get you all confused about that because they will bring up the all sorts of doctrine and all sorts of theory and whatever, and that's just kind of boring and irrelevant, right? Because what actually sold communism to a minority of Russians, not a majority, that's a myth. Let's re-roll. Man, it's trash. Gives me over. But the thing is, like what we call communism, like, it's really just kind of a cult of fairness. And when you recognize it that way, it's a lot more... I want to put something on. I'll put a mealworm. I want to do... What do I want to do here? I'll put... No good sacrifices here. So, but on that, in communism, like, what they're doing is they're actually appealing to something that's kind of base in humans, which is like a sense of fairness. Now, the instinct for fairness is kind of interesting. There's an interesting little study on chimpanzees that where they actually took two chimpanzees and they separated them from each other. Why did I picked that? Because of this. That's why I picked this. And they separated them from each other, and they had a little tray. And on this tray, they put on a bunch of food. And the tray could go back and forth between the chimpanzees. And if the tray was in front of one chimpanzee, that chimpanzee could get the food. If the tray was in front of the other chimpanzee, that chimpanzee could get the food. And so, but however, at any time, one of the chimpanzees could flip the tray, and then nobody gets any food. So what they found was that when a human was in control of where the tray went, and the human was intentionally giving one chimpanzee more access to the tray of food than the other chimpanzee, the put upon chimpanzee wouldn't flip the tray if a human was controlling the movement of the tray. However, if one of the two chimpanzees was controlling the tray, well, one, invariably chimpanzees, right? The chimpanzee would give him a lot more time with the food than he would give to the other chimpanzees. And as a result, the chimpanzee who wasn't controlling the tray would always flip the tray and say, no, I'd rather neither of us have food than for you to have more food than me. So, but chimpanzees tolerated a much greater deal of inequality for food distribution when it was a human who was in control of that. So, look over here. So I guess to them, humans are kind of like this ethereal force. Like, let's say, like for you, like let's say a bear is, coming at you. Let's say a bear is trying to kill you. Maggots. Let's say a bear is coming at you. Would you get angry at the bear? Would you get angry at a bear that's trying to attack you? No, you don't get angry at other animals. That's not like an emotion you typically have. Trash. You may get angry at like a dog that you've had for a while that's like sort of integrated into your human group, that you start to see the dog as part of the human group. But like a wild animal, you really don't get angry at wild animals. So like with the communists, like they would make a lot of appeals to material betterment, but ultimately it was fairness. Because there are places and times like that were materially far worse off than Russia was before World War I. And most Russians understood that the food shortages and the everything else shortages that occurred during the war were a result of the war. Do I want to win? Let's pass. And they knew all those things were, a result of the war. So it wasn't purely material deprivation that I think caused these problems. Like the average inhabitant of Russia in, say, the average inhabitant of Russia in, say, 1913 was by all measures better off than the inhabitant of the Holy Roman Empire in 1600. And yet there were no, like, communist revolts in the Holy Roman Empire at that time. So no, it was quite clearly a cult of fairness, right? And they went into the ASIC of the typical Russians. And so then why would we call communism a cult if it's latching on to some base thing that people have? Well, I would say for two reasons. One is that it overshoots this, and it also overextends it and turns this kind of baseline ideal into into an absurd absolute that is then used to push a whole lot of other ideas that would never pass on their own if they weren't connected to this concept of fairness. So, inscription is Nazi occult lore, old data. Yes, that's the old data. Politics is inherently religious. You're mixing things up here. But, yeah. So, like, one thing I noticed back when I was in church groups and when I ran track, which was a co-ed sport, is that the girls would basically, what would happen in the absence of any real effort, what would happen is that girls would basically follow the boys and complain a lot. They would follow the boys and complain about the boys doing things that they didn't like. And it takes like effort, and it takes teaching about empowerment or whatever to get away from that. To get them to stop behaving that way and to behave in a more empowered manner. That's why you have this empowerment thing, because it's not part of the ASIC. It has to be driven into people, you know, that this is like the right way for things to be or something. You know, so like when the anti-suffragists, for example, were going around saying, like when the anti-suffragists were going around saying that that there were a whole bunch of scoundrels running around putting ideas into women's heads about like all these notions of rights and stuff, they were right. They were absolutely correct in that. Whatever your values of those things, if you think it's good or bad, that's a different topic altogether. Whatever your valuation of that, it's like it is true. You have to be taught that. You know, something as simple as going up to the girls and saying, you know, why should men be leading all the practices and prayers or whatever it is we're doing? Like, why should men be leading things? Why don't you lead? Why don't you lead? Right? That is a very basic kind of philosophical CPU thinking. Right? That's a very basic beginnings of this. So, but like you see it, if it's not actively agitated for by like CPU driven or philosophical thinkers, like women's equality just never really becomes a thing. Right? And they don't really think about it. They don't really care about it. It's not something they think they need. Until like you tell them that they need it, and then suddenly fairness. Then you sort of hook that into fairness, right? And they stop thinking in terms of the broader group. They start thinking along sex lines, right? So basically, the CPU and the ASIC sort of have this interaction, right? So the thing is, like things like women's equality or women's right, that is a counter ASIC, counter baseline, counter hardware thing. But it piggybacks but the thing is, all these things, they sort of piggyback onto like the pro ASIC instinct of fairness, right? It's only fair. It's fair to give women an equal voice. And, you know, this is why I think you see the whole grug big brain axis, like where you have these grugs, they're impervious to socialization, right? They can't understand the socialization well enough to really internalize it, right? So you got a lot of grugs who just sort of go, you know, work for Gran, work for me, whatever. And then you have big brains who, you know, who are, I guess you could say, less, I mean, this is going to sound weird, but are like less programmable. And so those are, and so they end up not, and so paradoxically, like really, you know, really high IQs end up sort of going back to, or at least more likely to go back to like baseline, to say that like, no, philosophy is gay, you know, not science is gay, but philosophy is gay. And this is all trash. Still gotta get rid of the wingworm. So yes, the Grug Big Brain Alliance is what we see a lot, and don't be that guy. Like, I know every once in a while there's a guy who will go in and saying, well, philosophy is just the study of knowledge, so everything you do is philosophy. I should have used my items. So I don't know really how to order this, but I'm thinking like, what the heck are these things people call leftists, because I don't think, you know, quote unquote conservatives need explaining, right? People who either just want to grill or believe the way people have believed for thousands of years don't need explaining. But they need explaining. Now, there's a few things that I sort of came to over time that I think can shed some insight onto this. And the first is that everywhere that it has been measured, everywhere that it has always been measured, people that we call quote-unquote leftists by any criteria, be it, you know, this is a good card, but the reason I want to get two costs, or either two costs or bones, is because I want to draw this. I want to draw this as much as possible. So I stay away from one cost, even though one costs are fantastic. But basically everyone, for as long as it's been measured, people we call leftists have had lower fertility rates than people we call right wing by either political party, identified quote unquote ideology, or whatever. So like this is a thing that like has always been true. And the next thing is that people in the past, by modern standards, were far more, you know, quote unquote, far more quote unquote, you know, I mean, they were more like theistically religious than today. They were more pro-segregation, anti-gay, anti-abortion, anti-women's rights, and most importantly, in favor of keeping out dirty foreigners. But then there's another thing, though, is that the heritability of political views was around 0.4 in the mid-2000s. Higher on social and immigration issues, so you're dealing like on immigration, like a heritability of 0.6. Lower on economic issues, which of course actually I felt vindicated when I first read that, because that seemed to be my experience, that people were far more open on economic things than they are on like especially on immigration. So we have people in the past who, like, genetically speaking, should be like shitlibs, but they were not. In fact, they were, you know, what people today would call like Nazi or whatever. Now, this might be sort of my personal bias, is that, let's see if we get a good one. It's health, not an insta win. But I do need to buff it anyway. So, and the thing is, there's a bunch of non-psychological traits that I know that are that can use to predict if you're like liberal or conservative, for example. So, for example, like if you tend to be grossed out by things a lot more. Okay, like I'll just go with like what would be like a quote-unquote leftist. What are like quote-unquote leftist traits? If you don't get grossed out by things very much, like shitlibs tend to not be grossed out by much. If you have a messy room, if you prefer cats to dogs. Another thing is, how quickly do you change your strategy after an unsuccessful run at something, like a game, for example. And do you tend towards narcissism or neuroticism? Now, having like an online presence and like fans and stuff, like that's going to tend you toward narcissism just as an environmental thing. But like dispositionally, I would rate myself more on the neurotic than the narcissistic side. Another thing is that, like, I naturally... Oh, geez, I screwed up. We're gonna lose. No, we're not gonna lose. Is that I tend to would tend to avert my gaze normally. But I train myself out of that. So, but dispositionally, I avoid eye contact, and I have a messy room. I change my strategies a lot, and you know, and also as an aside, as much racism and hate speech as I've promoted, my score on like the implicit association race test is about average. So. Like, basically, like, oh, another thing is, like, the blink response. Like, shitlibs tend to have a higher blink response threshold, like a loud sound. If there's a loud sound, people who are more conservative, they will blink at a lower decibel level than shitlibs will. It takes a louder bang, for example, to cause, like, neurological shitlibs to blink. Right, they have less of a blink response. And that's definitely me. I have a much higher threshold for the blink response. I don't get grossed out by things. So basically, for me, personally, like, I'm like a total neurological shitlib. Right? So, and just as an aside for people, like, changing your strategies after a reverse, like, let's say you have a strategy going into a game, it fails, and, you know, like, the speed at which you change your strategy after a failure is not, like, smart, you know? Like it could just be, like it's not necessarily good or bad to change your strategy after one rough patch, you know? It could have just been, like, a fluke or something, right? So that's not necessarily a good or bad thing. Remember, both of these strategies evolved. I'm getting all one costs. Okay, well, I can... put the pack rat onto something useful. So, so, and like, based on the fertility data, people in the past should have been like raging shitlibs, and yet today they'd be called Nazis. So, like, what's going on then, right? So, for an individual, sure, like a heritability of 0.4 can account for instances of weirdness, right? But for a population, say 10,000 or more, certainly like medieval Europe, which had, you know, several millions of people, you know, a 0.4 heritability is going to be functionally deterministic, right? So what's going on with those people? Why are those people, like, so, you know, quote unquote right wing, despite what they should be, you know, based on everything we know about fertility data, they should be quote unquote left wing. And like, so as like sort of a hobby horse, I like to look a lot at ex-Scientologists and how they would describe Scientology. Now, knowing what I know about testimony in general and memory, and the fact that these are people self-selected, not just in terms of leaving Scientology, but in terms of... Get some pelts here. But in terms of coming out and publicly speaking out against Scientology, you know, take what these like ex-Scientologists say with like several, you know, barrels of salt. like what they say about the Rehabilitation Project Force, like, you know, whatever. like who knows? You know, you could say, well, all these ex-Scientologists, all their testimonies converge. They all saying the same thing. Like, oh, okay. So gas chambers at Dachau, Iraq WMDs, Russians in England, you know. UFOs, Bigfoot, right? Convergent testimony means it's true. So now what I found about ex-Scientologists, though, when they left Scientology, is that they either didn't talk about politics at all, or if they did, they were raging shitlibs. Like you don't get like conservative ex-Scientologists. So like you don't get any conservative ex-Scientologists. And like predictably, there was this moron, Tory Magoo, who would just babble on and on about like the cult of George Bush. I don't want to use that L yet. Which is ridiculous, right? And there's this other guy, Stephen Hassan, not an ex-Scientologist, but an ex-Moonie, the Unification Church of Ban Ki-moon. And he went around talking about like the cult of Trump, you know, which of course is ridiculous. But yeah, he would talk about the cult of Trump. And so now, of course, this is just crazy because, like, you think about the unprecedented numbers of 1, 2, 3. So you think about like the unprecedented violations of ASIC that are going on today, like, you know, pro homosexuality, like now transsexuality, pro racial foreigners, you know, women's in positions of power or whatever. Whatever you think about those things, they are all in fact like huge violations of like the ASIC. And so to call somebody who supports all of those things to then go and call someone else cultic is pretty bizarre. Right? It's really kind of amazing. So, but I'm digressing on that. Now, the cult research, as I've talked about before, it's like horrifically bad. Like, it's so bad. Like it's focused on like experiential factors. Like, they'll say that, hey, guess what? People are more likely to join a cult. What? Oh, I got another one cost. I'm an idiot. Okay, I can sack it. People are more likely to join a cult if they, lose. They're more likely to join a cult if they're like what they call a cult, which of course in colloquial. Oh, what? Oh, god damn it! I won. All right. Well, I'll take the bones, but I can get rid of the one cost here. So don't be drawing that. Put it on. On you. So, you know, they'll say things like and they focus on all these environmental trinkets. The cult research does, like they'll say that if you're poor and you have no friends, you're more likely to join a cult. Like, wow. A great info, Institute of Cultic Studies. Now I know. Right? Oh, people find God in low points in their lives? Oh, thanks. Wow, thanks for this amazing insight. And it's Okay, so I'll do this, this. Yes. So yeah, it's absolutely like useless. Or they'll point out, hey, when did communism come about in Russia? Oh, when Russia was having a bad time. Oh, you don't say. So, and the only way I was able to actually really shed any this is going bad. The only way I was able to shed any real light on these research into, to try to figure out who like actually joins cults, like for real, like what are called formal cults, like these small non-hegemonic cults that people call cults, was actually a study that was done on it was called Who Buys New Age Religion Materials, and it was done on. It was strange. It was done in Texas, and it was about who bought like what they call New Age material works, which is basically just like, again, a way of saying quote unquote cult. And what they found, as it turned out, like it was all the people you would expect to be shitlibs, right? It was people who are politically liberal, younger, more highly educated, more often women than men. Okay, those are the people who bought, this like cult material or New Age religion materials. So that's sort of ties into, and that kind of explains a lot of the incongruities with like right wingers, quote unquote, having had higher fertilities for as long as it's been measured. Of course, that can't have always been the case because, like, where did shitlibs ever come from? So. So the answer just of all this seems to just pop out at you. Like what we're dealing with, the so-called left-right thing, is really more of a CPU ASIC thing, more CPU driven, more culty, more into causes, like more ASIC driven, more instinctual, and that's not like oh we're overcoming our programming, that makes us better, right? There's a tendency for people to sniff their own farts and think that. And this also squares the circle of the past, like the CPU-driven cultiness of the past. It's not tied to any specific idea, right? Like, and like an idea can go against the ASIC, or it can create logical structures that kind of overextend like hardware things into absurdities. For example, fairness, right? Taking fairness too far. And another thing would be like an example, a tendency to think my group right or wrong, or my group overall. That's something that like all humans tend to do. My group overall, that's like a hardwired sort of thing. What's not hardwired is thinking that you have some God-given mission to dominate and enslave all other groups, right? A kind of overextension of like groupism. And I think that actually sort of infected some segments of the Nazi Party and to an extent the German public in World War II as the war went on. But it became majorly exacerbated when Britain refused to accept peace terms after Poland and then after France. That it was already kind of there in Germany, like sort of this manifest destiny strain. But it wasn't like a foregone conclusion that was the plan. Hitler had was willing to create like an independent Polish state in his peace treaty to Britain and France in 1939. So like the Great Empire was not some foregone conclusion. I'm gonna flame it. So now, oh, here we go. So the Nazis, like, it's not like a matter of native general intelligence either, right? Or being more CPU driven doesn't make you like smart. Like there have been IQ test comparisons of like Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals, and they vary a lot. But they seem to settle around like a 2-point advantage for what you call either Democrats or liberals. And that 2-point advantage, like I think that's just college. So basically, I don't think that's real. Like going to college, it'll raise your IQ from anywhere from 4 to 6 points, like while you're there, and it'll fade out, but it'll stay there for a little while after. But it's G hollow, right? You're not actually causing, like you don't actually get smarter when you go to college. Okay, like in terms of general intelligence by going to college. So I think whatever IQ advantages white Democrats have, it's just this kind of thin, shallow, environmentally caused bump that's caused from going to college. It doesn't reflect real intelligence or G or whatever. So anyway, anything else I wanted to ramble on about? I think not. I think that's basically the opening ramble thing. So anyway, so now I'll go ahead and look at chat and see what people are saying. I thought IQ wasn't supposed to be mutable. Okay. It's G factor. Just say G factor. Like it's like it's on a 3-week waiting period since its first payment on that site. What is CPU and ASIC since I came in late? I thought this was about Bitcoin mining. Yeah, that's true. They are moving away from GPUs and going to application-specific integrated circuits or FPGAs to mine Bitcoin. Trying to lose this. Dumb people either vote libtard because Rihanna told them to vote, or racist because fuck Nig Midwit going to college, but lib vote that. Okay. I have no idea what you're saying. Ah, God damn it. I hate winning these things. So, you can perform below your natural IQ if you don't sleep. Yeah, like your IQ is variable in the same way that like your strength is variable. Less so. All right, so here we are getting our little Mantis God here. Our overpowered card. This is basically what you do in the Mantis God deck on Casey's mod. Ah, good enough. You did an okay painting, Mr. Goo. So basically in this run, see, this is why you don't want 1 cost in your deck, because it prevents you from drawing the Mantis God. And now I have to just blah, deal with this crap.
Anonymous sent $34. Enjoyed your last stream. Have fun hitting your first jail.
Wait. Enjoyed your last stream. Have fun hitting your first jail. Jail? Does anyone know what he means by jail? I'm actually streaming here precisely because Cozy is, supposed to not have bans if he means that. Oh, wow, goal hit. Oh, so yeah, somebody hit the goal. Cool. Neato. Welcome to Cozy Jail. I don't know what is Cozy Jail. Having your first. Oh, he may have meant goal. Your content was instrumental in red pilling me. Happy to see you on Cozy. Yeah, it's one thing I sort of like about this is it's just sort of what am I doing? Do I survive? Yeah, I survive. And I survive again. I survive again. Someone press the independent thought alarm. Authorities are on their way. I don't know. Is there like TOS on Cozy? Like I know like don't show porn, don't do things like that. But like I don't know, is there like a TOS on Cozy? I mean that would be I mean just sort of out of politeness, you know. Yeah. See, this is why you don't want one costs in your... Screw this.
Stinky sent $5 PP poo poo.
Excellent. Thank you. Good to know.
Wonder Pets Patriot sent $10. Thoughts on internal monologues not being ubiquitous? Would this qualify as a way to determine real thinkers versus those who relegate thought, or is it not that deep?
What's thoughts on internal logs not being ubiquitous? Oh, that thing. I don't know. That seems weird to me. Like not having an internal monologue, like so part of me questions whether that's true, but I haven't seen the research on that. Maybe they have some really novel, sophisticated way of figuring that out, but I don't know if that's true or not. But I would say that if that's true and you don't actually have an internal monologue, then what's going to happen, I think, is that like you're not going to be able.
Racism 2 sent $5. How long do you believe that has until balkanization?
Okay, let me do the thought thing. Is that basically it's kind of a cliche, but I think it's true that language is the structure of thought. And if you don't have language to structure your thought, that's going to make your... Oh, good, I lost. That's going to make your thought similar to what it is for illiterates. So I think actually if you don't have an internal monologue, you're probably going to be less likely... You're probably going to be more based, is what I would say. I think you'd probably be more based if you lack an internal monologue. Okay, racism 2. How long do you believe the U.S. has until balkanization? See, the problem with these things is that, like, nothing happens. It looks like nothing's ever going to happen. And then, like, everything happens.
Arani sent $5. Hey Ryan, is it true you fucked Will Smith's wife and he took it out on Chris Rock? P.S. Love the streams. Thanks for everything you do.
Okay. You're not... We weren't supposed to talk about that. Supposed to just not talk about that. I don't know why you brought that up. I don't know if I'm gonna be willing to tell you things anymore. And I don't want to talk about, you know, this is a kind of African slave fetish thing going on. So, whatever. All that race play stuff. All right. Merge these. Willing. Okay. So what do I talk about? I got through my notes, and I got through my notes faster than I thought it would. Because the idea is I start talking about things, and then I get derailed by chat, and so it takes forever to get through a thing. But the problem is, I ignore chat too much, so that's a bit of an issue. So Ryan, talk about 80% of blacks staying on plantations voluntarily. You mentioned that earlier. That's in a thing. That's in a thing that I wrote in a document that I don't have up on my in my Telegram area, and I don't even think it's up on in my document collections anywhere online. I'm going to write down to find that and put that, because it's a big long thing. It's a big long thing. It has lots of studies, lots of data tables, lots of stuff from Time on the Cross, looking at nutrition and calories, showing that yes, black slaves had better nutrition than free whites. So I'm going to write that down. Slavery, seg, arc, put online. So yeah, that's the thing that I have. Big old document that I'm working on. I don't know how many pages it is. Something like 40 pages or something. I was doing it sort of the same time that I did that document on like the myth of, or how black people tend to think that they're discriminated against in situations where they actually aren't, and going through like a bunch of studies where they're actually treated identically to like white people, how white people are treated, and black people in these studies will believe that they're actually like being discriminated against.
Na Tiger sent $5 do you think that Russians will beat the Muslims of the 2020 news quickly?
Okay, why are people choosing like the Russian voice? Not a jogger. Do you think that the Russians will be the Muslims of the 2020 news cycle? It'll be harder because Russia is a more substantial state, and they're more like independent. They're more independent than Iraq ever was, or Syria or Libya or any of these states. Like Russia is a completely different ball of wax than the. Russia is a completely different ball of wax than the smaller Muslim countries to the south of Russia. Russia being a much larger Muslim country. See, that was clever because I chuckled at it, so you know that was actually like a clever line, and the slow delivery of it. So they're not going to be able to, because the thing is like to call up to, because imagine ginning up the kind of hysteria against Russia that they did against Iraq, where you had people thinking that there were like attacks in the U.S. by like Iraqi chemical weapons things. That's how hysterical the populations were. Like no conceptions of like space and time. I forget if I talked about this on the previous stream about the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Trash. It's all trash. This is playable, at least. About the Russian Black Sea Fleet, how they actually, while they were doing exercises in the Baltic Sea, there were all sorts of there are fears that this was during the Russo-Japanese War, and they're being prepared to sail like around the world to Japan. And they actually had fears, they actually had scares that they thought they were under attack by the Japanese while they were in the Baltic Sea. So the Russian commanders were like, oh, our sailors don't really have much of a conception of like space and time. And so I'm sort of thinking about that when people in the US are like concerned about like Iraqi, like, you know, oh, there's like panicking about like out of the Bin Laden itch, for example, But there's also like people reporting like, oh, there are gassings here. It might be the Iraqis or something. They're like in the middle of Iowa or something. So they're a minority, obviously. But see, that just indicated the level of hysteria population wide if a few people were thinking that against Iraq. And the problem is, if you gin up that level of hysteria against Russia, what are you going to do? Are you going to invade Russia and do regime change in Russia like you did in Iraq? Like, no way. Russia has those hypersonic missiles that can get through the U.S. missile defense shield. Now, I think U.S. missile defense, this is just my guess, I don't know. I'm being interrupted by chats. Oh, there's no TTS. I think that U.S. missile defense shields is, like, I don't know this for certain, but I think one thing that U.S. missile defense does that they don't talk about is they actually fire nuclear weapons into the sky and explode the nuclear weapons into the sky and basically just set the sky on fire, right? And blow anything out of the sky. They basically just set these nuclear warheads to airburst and just blow up anything in the area, so they don't have to have all these precision interceptions or whatever. But if the Russian regime looks like it's gonna fall, they're gonna dead hand, right? The USSR had like this thing called the dead hand, where like if it looked like the regime was falling, some like military officials above a certain rank, anyone could instigate like total global nuclear annihilation. Israel has the same thing. It's called the Samson option, even though Israel is not supposedly doesn't have nukes, they supposedly don't have nukes, but they have nukes, and they have something called the Samson option, which is like generally known, which is basically the same as the USSR's dead hand. I don't know if the U.S. has anything like that, but yeah, basically they can't do what they did for Iraq and Afghanistan, and even what they did with Libya and tried to do with Syria, because Russia is so much more of a substantial state. And when people talk about the military weakness of Russia, like that may be true, may not be true, but I'll say one thing: in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya, there was no Russian presence. Those regimes were all toppled. In Syria, there was a Russian presence, and Assad was not toppled. Now you can look at, people will have all sorts of propaganda saying the Russian missile systems, oh, they're crap, they didn't work. Russian weapons were crap. Oh, we blew up these Russian, like, quote unquote volunteers, kind of like the German volunteers to Finland during the Russo-Finnish War, which weren't really volunteers. Like, wow, your volunteers have a whole lot of ME-109s, But anyway, to answer that question, no, they can't. Okay, there's another chat here. You should take a deep dive into IP laws. Oh, that's quite a diversion. Nada. I don't know if I should say these. Well, I mean, they're usernames. So, like, just like as a warning, if you donate something in Super Chat, I'm going to say your username. So if you don't want a username, you could do like an anonymous or something. I think they're really illegitimated and Jews. Look into Stephen Kinsella's stuff on this. Okay. So another chat. Why don't you discuss diversity and crime data like...
George _ sent $5. Why don't you discuss diversity and crime data like AltHype's work? All those findings are significant and negative, and in general good. You not like the ethnic fractionalization data?
I haven't heard of AltHype's work, but that is actually something to take a note about. The thing is, like with race and crime, like I kind of don't care about race and crime, because for me, like race and crime is just like, because like crime, like how often do you get mugged, really? Like not very, like it's so like crime, I think, is not a big deal, especially if you're white and you live in a white area. It's not really that big of a deal, crime in general. Okay, but what crime is the only reason crime is interesting to me is because crime is, I see it as kind of a general indicator of how asshole-ish a population is. Like if a population has 10 times as many murderers, which I think is the only good measure of crime that you can use, right? I don't think, things like robbery, theft, like assault is especially like, what even is assault? Or rape is like, who knows? Oh, you say you were raped? Who knows, right? There are a lot of like who knows crimes, which I kind of don't really care about. Which is why I just look at murder as a proxy for crime, because murder at least has a body, right? So so the question about whether or not a crime occurred is pretty straightforward in the case of murder. Whereas these the whodunit, of course, can be questionable if it's not immediately solved. Like most murder cases aren't actually cases, right? So when people talk about the low closure rate for murder rates, they're talking about things that actually warrant an investigation. Most don't warrant an investigation because the whodunit is not a mystery at all. They're pled out. But anyway, this is me going on tangents. This is my problem with talking live. Do you not like ethnic fractionalization data? I am fine with ethnic fractionalization data. I'd be surprised if Alzheimer able to get that kind of granularity of data. I would be a little bit surprised. I figured crime stats were much more crude, but if he has ethnic fractionalization data, I'd be interested in looking at it. I'm assuming you're looking at ethnic fractionalization like in terms of admixture, genetic admixture, not like ethnic fractionalization of like the neighborhood or something. So anyway, AltHype. Look into that. All right, was there another one? No, that's all the chats. How many average viewers does Nick get? Like 6,000. Like he gets a lot. Or like 7,000. 10. I don't know, 12K. That's a little high, but my idea is to secretly to secretly. Okay, guys, don't tell anyone. I'm saying this on stream. But this is like a secret statement here. All right, ready for the secret devious plan that nobody can know about? The secret devious plan that nobody can know about is that I want to convince America Firsters to adopt my conception of like of like the left and right and sort of the cultiness thing. That's one of the things I want to do, right? And that because I think that is a more effective frame.
Anonymous
in
sent
arguing.
$5. What do you do about the fact that shitlibs don't even care if they're wrong?
They look. First off, like, how shitlib are we talking about? Okay, I'm going to pause this because this is actually a fun little fight here. That's not totally true. People do care about being right or wrong. Now, what you're saying when you say like shitlibs don't even care if they're wrong, that is like what you're talking about is like sort of belief preservation mechanisms that people have. And everyone has those to one degree or another. And part of the reason for that is because I've come to the conclusion that all human thought is confrontational. But that's another thing for another time. Like, for example, when you yourself are thinking over an idea in your own mind, you're actually engaged in a confrontational process with yourself. So this confrontation doesn't mean that you're getting angry or anything like that, but human thinking is confrontational. It's taking propositions and sort of stacking them up against each other. So human thinking is inherently confrontational. So it's always going, and so it's always going to be biased. But in terms of don't care if they're wrong, the thing is, like, that's not how people actually are. They do care if they're wrong, but if you care very deeply about a thing, being told that that thing is wrong is very painful. And so in a sense, you're just trying to avoid that pain. And as for not caring about whether or not they're wrong, like they do care. They do. All right. That's just think about times when you're biased. Like, think about times in the past when you held what you now consider to be wrong beliefs. Okay? And if you've ever changed your belief to anything, you've held a wrong belief. Now, maybe you were correct back then and you're wrong now, or you're wrong now and you were correct back then, or whatever. You have held wrong beliefs. And to a certain degree, and it varies from person to person, it's irritating for someone to come up to you and tell you, "Oh, you're wrong about this. Let me show you some tables and studies and stuff," right? And they're showing you a whole bunch of alien things that you've either never seen before, you vaguely heard about, and it's pain, which is why it's a long process. Which is why in my long book presentation, I start off with basically what I'm trying to do. For example, the thing on the Holocaust is and I don't know if this will work or not, but I think it's worth a shot, is I'm basically trying to convince people that the Holocaust didn't happen before even doing so. Like, before even saying that explicitly, by basically establishing all the premises before getting into the final application. By the time you get to the final application, you basically said testimony is BS. Convergence of evidence is not some foolproof thing, right? And then, and of course, I think another thing that's very effective, and this is something that the Kodo guys do, I think fairly well. And again, I think they should focus on this more. My criticism of Kodo is focus in how they organize their content, not their production of content, which is quite frankly miraculous. That they're able to find what they find is unbelievable researchers. But and that's why it's so irritating to me, because it's not like if they had nothing, then I wouldn't be very irritated about what I perceive as poor organization. What I perceive as poor organization. I wouldn't be irritated by it as much if they were just I'm not irritated by just idiots, but it's irritating to me precisely because they have so much good stuff. But yeah, well, boy, that was another long tangent. Yeah, basically, they do care if they're wrong. They just have psychological defense mechanisms, and you have to find a way to get around the psychological
Anonymous
defense
sent
mechanisms.
$5. Well, there is no social benefit to having the correct ideas. So even if they are wrong, they don't care. I've had friends who are woke on black crime but still hold shitlib opinions.
Well, I mean, with that kind of attitude, okay, let me put it this way. There's no social benefit to having the correct ideas, quote unquote correct, what you perceive as correct. Well, then why are there conservatives? And why, and why are there more people who today, because Biden is such an unbelievable shitstorm, why are there more conservatives today than there were 10 years ago or something? Why does the Republican Party outnumber the Democrat Party? Because people do care about reality, and yes, social pressure matters, and some people are more socially sensitive than others. More neurotic people, as a rule, tend to be more socially sensitive. I'm an exception, but that's sort of the thing. So they're going to feel more of that social force or whatever. Another one. Sorry for the typo. I know you talked about cults already, but you should look at XJW subreddit. Most ex-Jehovah Witnesses go full shitlib when leaving. There's so many coming out stories on there. It's pure cringe. Yeah, I would expect so. Because because if you look at Shitlib as just like the hegemonic cult, and Jehovah's Witness is just a non-hegemonic cult being defined as deviation from the ASIC. And the deviation can go either hard counter against the ASIC, like the Shakers. The Shakers would be like hard against the ASIC, right? Basically saying, don't breed, don't have kids. That's the Shakers. That's not taking something that's in the ASIC and then overextending it. That's like going.
Tyrone Kangston sent
So that's what
$5
Shitlib
about
is.
to prove you wrong with war. Hey everyone, where the crime at? The Atlantic. Atlanteans equal white people. Ocean and the Black Sea. No pirates own racist white supremacists.
Proud to prove you wrong with water Tyrone. Where to crime at? The Atlantic. Atlanteans equal white people. Okay, ocean and the Black Sea. And the Black Sea. Oh, Black Sea. No pirates owned racist white supremacists. Wait, Black Sea. No pirates. Like the Black Sea, which is north of Turkey, I assume. Black Sea. No pirates. There were no pirates in the Black Sea? That's okay. I know that's just like a joke, but I think that's kind of funny. All right. Okay. Speaking of pirates, we're fighting the pirate boss here. Avast ye, scallywag. Fucking on cost. Alright. So, there you go. Who the hell is Wurzelroot? There's just streamers on the site. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. AltHype, are there any good, useful politicians? Probably not. This is gonna sound weird. But I think the best bet at this point is actually Donald Trump. Like, I mean, I know that's like really... Oh, good, finally. We got the card. So just for anyone who's not understanding what's the issue here, when you draw your hand, you always get a one-cost card, at least one-cost card. So if you have like an insane card like the Mantis God, you don't want a whole bunch of other one-cost cards in your deck because you may draw those instead of the Mantis God. And the Mantis God deck is basically on like the one good card. Like you're all in on like a single card, and that's why it's such a pain to have. And so that's why whenever I draw, whenever the game forces me to draw new cards, I draw 2 costs. So it doesn't block the Mantis God. The Limoncello. Alright. See, this is now like trivial because see, this fight is just completely like not even a fight. Oh no, my mantis god. It's like it basically works that once you get your, you know, because it's infinite. Once you get like a good mantis god, that's basically, and you don't have a whole lot of one cost trash blocking it, not too much. You've basically won the whole thing. So anyway, will DeSantis succeed Trump? I don't know about DeSantis. Didn't he say some stuff about like anti BDS in Florida? Like that is a very questionable thing. So I don't know if this sucks compared to who. Like I mean, he's probably better than. All right, so we did it. We beat the game. So yeah, he's probably better than, you know, most Republicans. Yeah. Yeah, skip that. Okay. Well, I beat a game here. So what else do we want to talk about? There's an entire generation of established politicians trying to steal Trump's followers. That is true. Was a lot of generic brand Trumps, a lot of knockoff Trumps running around. Play Uno. Maybe I should play Uno. Do you know of a good link to an Uno game I can play? I guess what I can do is I can exit the mod. All right. What do I do? What do I do in here? I'm out of notes. I'm out of game. I don't know. I'm out of stuff. I'm out of content, guys. What do I do? What do I do, guys? How do I do I do a dance? I don't think I could do a dance. Let's not do a dance. Why is Trump the best bet? Trump is the best bet because he went in sort of, I think, kind of naive to what Washington was and didn't understand what he was getting
Anonymous
into.
sent $5 total Warhammer stream when?
Well, I heard Warhammer 3 was a disappointment. But, yeah, Total War Warhammer could do that. The problem is Total War Warhammer is like when you get into the battles, you actually have to, like, think about things a little bit. Probably not as much as Inscription, because once you get your blob set up, and especially, you know, I maybe I could do Total War Warhammer and play as dwarves. Right? That's probably the most mindless, faction. You just like build a box and win. Yeah, maybe Total War Warhammer dwarves. Ryan, what is the most insane blood libel you've ever seen? There's a professor who claims the British killed 1 billion Indians. That's pretty insane. I mean, of course, you know, I of course did like a little video on what the British did to India, and in that, like the population of India like grew like never before when the British took over. Like unprecedented population growth rates. So, I mean, it's like the most it would be the most incompetent genocide ever if that's what they were trying to do. Like we are deliberately trying to kill lots and lots of Indians, and yet, like, I don't know. I think the idea that Indians were genocided is just prima facie absurd, given how many there are. It's just that's just nuts. Can you tell us more about Jews wanting to stay with the Germans? Was there anything else like that? There was one thing else like that. For example, at Bergen-Belsen, the British took over Bergen-Belsen, and they had about 14,000 more Jews die in British custody. So, and what's funny about that is that if those Jews died in German custody, like, you know, you never would have heard the end of it. But I'm talking live. I don't know if it was Bergen-Belsen plus a bunch of other camps or what it was, but basically a lot of Jews died under British custody because they were already far gone with typhus, and so, you know, the British replacing the Germans didn't change that. It improved the material situation because now they weren't being bombed and starved, but you know, it's kind of a piece of evidence that, like, this was not an extermination center or anything, which is not something that's part of official history, but it is something that the average Joe still believes. So pressing and making a big deal about the Western camps is really important for the average Joe. So what else? So AltHype debunked them. Anyway, so did I get another chat? No, I did not. Okay. Well, yeah. So, now, see, here's what I'm doing. When I respond to regular chat, I am devaluing the money chats because, like, well, I don't know. I don't have to do a money chat. I'll just post my comment at the end of the stream when he's out of content because he didn't prepare properly because he's a bad streamer. It should be professional racist bad streamer. Play Minecraft. Yeah, you never run out of content with that. Holy shit. Like, yeah, we cool. We the cool kids club. Read more $0 super chats. That's what these are. These are $0 super chats. Depends on the quality of the comment. Do you think that Russia's motives for invading Ukraine were justified? See, the thing is, I'm leaning towards yes, but the thing is, I don't know enough about the situation as, like, people who have, as soon as the Russia thing hit the news cycle, there were a bunch of people who immediately just, like, you know, glued to their computers and spent, like, the day just reading about that topic, and I didn't, right? So my take is going to be not that well informed. Just my knee-jerk reaction is, it seems like it, because I know Russia has attempted to join NATO several times before. NATO said, no, you can't join us. And then they continue to expand NATO towards Russia's borders. They do the color revolution with Zelensky. I mean, this is all stuff you've heard before. I don't have a particularly unique take on it. You know, the Ukraine...
Anonymous sent $5. Don't worry. You're worth it, bro. What do you think of William Pierce?
Oh, Dr. William Luther Pierce. He kind of undermined, like, a lot of stuff he was saying by taking his own life. Though I don't, you walk a mile in a man's shoes before you judge and stuff like that. But I think I haven't listened to that much by William Luther Pierce. But whenever I listen to something by William Luther Pierce, it's there's not a whole lot that I disagree with. He says a lot of stuff that I say in these streams. Well, no, they're not what I say in these streams at all. What am I saying? But they're like the stuff I say in these streams, and that I listen to him and I go, that's big if true, big if true, big if true, big if true. And that's a problem with these streams because I'm talking extemporaneously. I don't, like when I say something like in like a presentation video form, I'm gonna have like a chart, and then like some explanatory stuff, and then like a quote, and it's gonna be all nicely packaged, so you know thing that I say is probably true because here's the chart, here's the, or here's the table, or here's some sort of binding subjectivity evidence, right? Whereas when I'm talking on stream, I'm saying stuff like, oh yeah, I remember hearing about the Jews dying in British custody in Bergen-Belsen. Like, that's the problem with streams, it's also the problem with live debates, is that like you're just saying stuff and there's no time to properly do things, which is why I've always held streaming to be like an inferior form of content to making videos. But the reality is, there are certain realities that like that streaming is where some things are just at, and I just had to get over my bugaboo about streaming and about the superiority of the content piece. Stream, big if true. Vid, big and true. And for stream, it's like big if true, but it's like, well, I listen to Ryan a lot, so what he says mostly checks out, so I'm just going to trust what he says in streams. So that means I can just say whatever I want. Aren't you like? Oh man. Okay, so this is why we have mods. Wait, he did not kill himself? What did I hear that? See, this is why it streams. William Luther Pierce. I remember I got that from Murdoch. It doesn't say that in his Wikipedia page. Oh, well then I was misinformed. He died 68. He died pretty young. Dies at 69. Huh. Well, I was misinformed and I was spreading disinformation there. Okay. Well, that's good that comment pointed that out, because then you'd have a whole bunch of people running around saying that. Well, AltHype said that. Yeah, for real, fact checked. He predicated, but I don't know. He died pretty young though. Like 68 is young. Was he like a smoker? I don't know. So yeah, minus truth points. Yeah. Do you think you'll do any debates in the future, or are you still against the idea of it? I'm largely against the idea of it, like. And watching Destiny and Nick talking about the Ukraine and seeing the whole Destiny machine gun thing, that kind of hardened my belief. Like seeing what Destiny was doing there by just like machine gunning all the facts. And like the Budapest Conference and the Treaty of Pinsk or whatever, that treaty and stuff like that. So like just being able to machine gun all those things.
How is the ASIC versus CPU framing more useful than the female versus male distinction? For left versus right wing politics, I prefer the latter, and through you'd be pushing that these days.
I prefer the latter, and through you'd be pushing that these days. Poseypin, did you mean thought that I'd be pushing that these days? I think the ASIC versus CPU framing is a very useful framing when talking to actual shitlibs. Because one thing, let me tell you, this is something that like I think shitlibs tend to are kind of suckers for. And it's also something that I'm kind of a sucker for too, but that makes sense because I'm like a neurological like shitlib. I'm like by all rights, I should be like a raging shitlib, right? I have all the neurological traits of that. Is that they, dare I say, quote unquote, we are suckers for deconstruction. Really like to deconstruct things. And if you and I think like the CPU ASIC, or you can use whatever you want. You could call it like base versus higher, or not, no, the term higher function is loaded because higher seems like it's better or something. I think CPU ASIC is probably like one of the most neutral ways to phrase it. Whereas if you talk about like the male versus female, like I get where you're coming from, and that's going to be, but the thing is, like, first off, I think a male-female distinction, I think that's incorrect. I think that what happens with females being more shitlibby is that they're just going on, is that females are more likely to glob onto what they perceive as the dominant hegemonic cult. And that's just what they're going to do. For example, I know that in England, in like at the turn of the century, women were less likely to be in favor of the socialists or anarchists movements than men were, because those were small, relatively stigmatized groups at that place in time. So, yeah. Basically, I think CPU versus ASIC is correct. It's more palatable, and I just think it works better, and it's easier, and it would be an easier sell to like the average Joe. The following you since 2011 or 2010, people need to appreciate you practically founded the dissident right. I don't know about founded. Like, I don't know. It's more like I'm almost like in an ice chamber, in an ice box. I mean, and like I'm also kind of like in a time capsule in several ways. Like I've met up with people who, like, aside from me getting fat, like I almost haven't aged at all, and that has to do for several things. One of which is genetics. My families are very slow agers. But yeah, and so my voice hasn't really changed. It's changed a little bit. If you go back far enough, it'll sound a little bit. But part of that's the microphone. I had a really shitty microphone back then that made everything I sounded very tinny, I would say. Whereas now I have a better microphone that makes me sound more like what I actually sound like. I forget what I was talking about. Founding to the dissident right. I don't think so. I think there are a lot of people who saw my stuff and got bigger than me, but no.
Been following you since 2010. People need to appreciate you practically founded the dissident right.
Oh, so that's the same comment. All right, we got to get AltHype on the Aryan Race Warrior workout plan. No. Wurzel and Ryan, fat twins. I'm a lot less fat than I was. Basically, I discovered fasting, and it has been miraculous. Once I get to my target weight, I'll tell you all how fat I got, just how farcically obese I got. Once I'm no longer at that weight. So, yeah, no, not 400 pounds, not that high, but pretty high. Let's just say I busted the deuce, went over 200. But fasting is really amazing. Fatness ain't even real. Just stop eating it. But like the thing is, that's like largely true. Like. But people don't understand it. They don't, whatever. Just don't stop talking about that, Mr. Supreme Gentleman. I'm not blocking you, but like it's not a topic of discussion.
The _pragmatopian sent $5. I can relate to your hatred of philosophy and philosophers. Almost all of them are frauds who don't actually care about the truth. They're narcissistic shitlibs who moralize and use tactical nihilism to argue against their opponents.
Yes, and it's very tactical, and like tactical deconstruction of things. And one thing, part of I think what generated such a hatred of like philosophy in general was my time with like the anarchists, And I don't know. I remember this is getting into the old data, guys. This is getting into the old lore. I remember when I was trying to argue about how to create defense, like military defense and protection in a polycentric legal order. And the problem with that, obviously, is the free rider problem. And people talk about war insurance, like you have insurance for war damages. Sure, whatever. But that doesn't solve the free rider problem, because why would you spend war insurance to pay for the military? Why would war insurance cover the military? Right? Like just free ride. Other people paying for the military, oh, cool, good for them. We'll just free ride off of that. So how do you solve the free rider problem? And I basically came to the conclusion that you basically have to have a tax with the basically whatever sort of analog you're using, like Brehon law or like an all thing equivalent, or any kind of what we call non-monopolistic legal orders. And that's basically what I decided and so the thing is, I was trying to solve all these things, and I was trying to say, what actually is this quote-unquote anarchism? And it's like, oh, it's a non-centralized legal order, but it's still a legal order. It still has law, right? For example, in a polycentric legal order in Ireland, you still had land ownership and you still had slavery, right? Because slavery was upheld by the Brehon law. There was no lawmaking authority you could point to, but it was just like the law, kind of an emergent thing, that slavery was allowed, and some people were slaves and not. And I was like, and so I'm trying to do this and like actually trying to describe it for real, and saying that like, okay, so defense would be solved by saying you have to pay taxes for the military, or you are outlawed, meaning anybody can kill you and take your stuff at no consequence, which is outlawing is basically a death sentence. So for most people. But then I got all sorts of like responses that like, no, this violates like morality. This like, well, then if you're going to make people pay taxes, then what's the point of anarchism? And I remember there was one, like one guy was saying that, oh, well, here's what you'll have. You'll have people who are in the military during wars, but then when there's not a war, they'll go back and do other jobs like construction or whatever. And then when there's a war looming, they'll go into a military when there's a demand for military services at a place that's about to be attacked. I forget who that guy was. Oh, man, there's so many fun stories from the anarchists. It's just so nuts. It's like, but yeah, just variations on that. Or some people would say, well, the free rider problem is just not a problem. Let's just let people free ride. Like, but yeah, but also I spent like, there are all sorts of debates about moral philosophy, and like there was this guy Brain Police who was talking about like thick libertarianism and a more robust conception of freedom, which basically means you can't have your own place, white man, because that's not robust freedom. That's not true liberty. Like true liberty means you're forced to allow in any dreg who wants to be like your next door neighbor, and you can't keep him out. That's liberty. That's freedom, according to like, I don't know, like left libertarians or whatever. So but yeah, that's I don't know if anybody remembers thick libertarianism, which is to say like not libertarianism. Big government anarchism, that's what it is. It's big government anarchism. So also Molyneux and his crazy ass like Molyneux actually had a kind of a very Marxoid idea of like the new libertarian man. Like the new libertarian man would be created through like better parenting. I think he doesn't talk about that anymore, thank God. I don't know if he still believes it or not, but it would be weird if he still believes it, because like now he's saying all this stuff about heredity and genetics. So, which doesn't necessarily undermine what he's saying about peaceful parenting, or what he said about peaceful parenting, but it kind of thematically undermines it. Like when you're talking about like, and he also made some posts later talking about how like parenting is not going to affect your kids. So I think he's completely dropped the new libertarian man through peaceful parenting thing, kind of like the new socialist man through Marx. Not a term Marx himself ever used, but Marxists describing Marx use the term new socialist man will come about through a change in material conditions. And Molyneux was kind of like that. A change in parenting will create the new libertarian man who opposes the inherent violence and inherent contradiction of, the monopoly of force. So, let's see. The Pragmatopian. That being said, the three philosophers who do actually care about what is true have great philosophies. The three philosophers who do actually care about what is true, who would those be? So, I don't know. Who would those be? Pragmatopian, the Pragmatopian. Molyneux is very Marxist in his love for economics based on pseudoscience. There was I forget what it was. I don't know if it was an audiobook of Karl Popper. It must have been something by an audiobook by Karl Popper, and the guy reading it said, "This is a LibriVox recording." He kept saying pseudoscience over and over again, and that book had a ton of usage of the word pseudo. so like pseudo this, pseudo that, but every time it's like I don't know, it was like 12 hours of him speaking it, reading it, and he's always saying pseudo over and over again. That was pseudo intellectual. I read Aquinas' Summa contra Gentiles and Summa Theologica. Did that convince you to be a Catholic and that the atheists were wrong? ANCAPism as libertarianism has declined since then. Yes, it has. I think one reason that ANCAPism and libertarianism has declined is that basically, like, I don't know, when you have people like Vaush shilling for like Google and Amazon and is like pro-military industrial complex, and like shilling for like coups in Ukraine, like, I don't know, like what's like economic left, like, is that even a thing anymore? But the thing is, that change right there, that's basically like point to my idea that people like Vaush, what they are is they're neurologically predisposed to cultic thinking. They're neurologically very receptive to deconstruction, which makes them get away from the ASIC, right? They're suckers for that. They're suckers for deconstruction, and so they're very easily persuaded by philosophy, right? And so they end up thinking things like, and so and that is what they are. And so the specific beliefs at a place in time that they adopt are kind of like just a symptom of a place and time. So like Vaush, for example, says, "I'm an anarchist," or whatever. That's not a thing. Well, anyway, Nick is streaming right now, so I think that's probably a good time to leave, because he's gonna take a lot of viewers, and there's probably people want to go see Nick's stream, and I would prefer to not compete with that. So I think that'll be a good time to end this. He's not streaming? Well, he's got like a whole bunch of views there. He won't be for 2 hours. What? This is a 2-hour pre-show? Holy shit. Okay. Well, never mind then. I guess I'll just stay here. He could be live any second. So yeah. Wow. That's is that a thing? Did people do that? Did people go like, all right, we're doing this stream, so let's start it and do a 2-hour intro with music and baubles and stuff? Is there any use in philosophy? I don't think so. I haven't seen anybody benefit from, like, it depends on like what you mean by like philosophy. If you mean philosophy, like, if by philosophy you mean psychology, then yes, there's a certain, like, quantitative psychology is good. Is generally like an okay field. But if you mean, like, philosophy can mean a lot of things. Do you mean like philosophy of mind? Well, philosophy of mind, who cares? You have psychology, so whatever. Do you mean like the only kind of philosophy I think really
Anonymous sent
is
$5.
distinct
Nix 2%
is moral
applicant, so
philosophy.
Hess on colored people time.
So he's on colored people time. Oh, there you go. There you go. He's on colored people time. That's the way that works. Chat is so eager to bitch about Nick's tardiness, Lamau, myself included. Well, it's not tardy. Like if he arrives exactly when he plans to. If he plans to be late. 50% Italian. I mean, that's basically like Abo. Like, jeez. Why haven't you been posting on BitChute? Because I haven't been making videos. Like videos take like time and effort to make, and like and the problem is like I research things and I have like a bunch of documents full of stuff that I haven't converted into like video, and converting thing into video, like you have to do the audio, which takes more time than streaming because I have to cut out all of my stutters and pauses. On a stream, it's accepted. Like it's accepted that you're going to stutter and pause and go off on goofy tangents or whatever. But like in a presentation, you know, you want it to be a little bit tighter. So it takes hours and hours to turn something into a video, even a fairly basic video. So I don't know if we have any video editors in here that know that it's a thing. So I hope you keep streaming like this often. Hire an editor, lad. Well, to get an editor, that costs money. And where am I going to get money? Oh, here I am. Well, there you go. Cracking the code. Is your 3-hour COVID video worth watching all the way through? Honestly, no, it's not. I wouldn't watch it all the way through. It's a lot of speculation. It's kind of a dead issue now. So it's speculation about a dead issue. So no, I don't think it's worth watching all the way through. Even though it's my video, my wonderful video, but I don't think it is now. Do you have an IT background? Remember you said you fix people's computers? Yeah, I actually spent some time working at on-site tech support. And the funny thing about
Biggest
that...
Dickus sent $5. Ryan, great to see you on Cozy. You are one of the greats back in the day. New fag growipers just don't know.
They just don't know.
Is BitChute still the best place for your videos?
Yeah, I cross-post on BitChute and Odyssey. That's basically where I post them. But I haven't been posting them very often. But the editing is the bottleneck. If I could hire an editor somehow, that would make video production rapidly accelerate.
Pepe _ sent $5. If you run out of content, doing some Vosh/Destiny reaction streams would be fun to watch.
But what you don't understand, Pepe, is that I'm a bigot, right? And not a bigot in like the stupid shitlib meaning of the term, but like I have my ideas about things, and like if I'm responding to a video, like that's better because I can go through the video and like write responses as I'm going through it. But like a live reaction, the problem is like Vouch or Destiny are just going to be machine gunning a bunch of things, right? And in a live react, you can't deconstruct those. So it's just like, oh, Destiny's saying a thing. Maybe that's true or not. I don't know. Now, in a video response, when I video response to a shitlib, almost everything they say I can end up saying like why it's either untrue or irrelevant. Because the thing is like, like on the whole, shitlibs are going to be wrong just from the metadata, right? Basically, okay, and this is something I haven't talked about in this stream. Maybe for the next stream, that's maybe something to talk about a little bit, is that if something is a hegemonic cult, and like basically a cult being defined as major deviations from ASIC, that is, does it massively deviate from ASIC? Is it unique? Is it like a historically unique thing? And is it, do people get really butt mad when you challenge it? And do they try to censor you and give you the stick if you question it? those are basically the three sort of signs of something being a hegemonic cult. And if it's a hegemonic cult, it's probably wrong. So, like, because everyone in the past that we know of has been, on the whole, wrong. Not that, like, you know, Karl Marx, for example, was wrong about absolutely everything. Like, I don't think the concept of surplus value is, like, completely incorrect, okay? But like socially necessary labor time certainly is, right? Not understanding the diamond water paradox is, which like the average Russian peasant intuitively understood the diamond water, the solution to the diamond water quote unquote paradox. But basically that's why I wouldn't want to do live reacts, because live reacts, it's like, oh, he says a thing, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, I don't know. So live reacts are kind of just, you know, whatever. People need to stop thinking and just do what God says. Well, who says what God says?
Arani sent $5. Ryan, sickle cell anemia is environmental, not genetic. Entirely phenotypic. It's settled science.
That was amazing. That was amazing that he actually tried to like say that's not. Somehow he tried to say that he didn't say that. It was just I forgot his try like weaseling out of that. But yeah, that was amazing. Like sickle cell anemia, it's not it's not genetic. It's phenotypic. It's entirely phenotypic. Like, it's not genetic. It's phenotypic. Which like phenotype is just the outward expression of an organism that can be that, and of course every organism, like, you are genes expressed in an environment, right? And the genes expressed in the environment, that's the phenotype, right? Just so to say it's not genetic, it's phenotypic, it's like yeah, it's a nonism, it's a nonsense statement.
Fisherman sent $10 question about your time with anarchists. Have you heard the argument for prosecution to prove justification? Mark Stevens has had some people get their tickets thrown out of court. He has some examples on his YouTube channel. Thoughts on this tacti?
I have not heard of that, but that sounds interesting. If he's actually been able to get like tickets thrown out of court. So Mark Stevens, where did they put? Here it is. So Fisherman, Mark Stevens. Okay, that seems interesting. Mark Stevens. So yeah. Well, anyway, that's one good thing about this stream is that actually stuff that actually sounds interesting to me. So play Hail and Kill by Man O' War for the outro. I don't know how to play outros. I do this. I saw Destiny was calling him a pedo now too. Where's Destiny streaming? Alex Jones? Is it the real Alex Jones? Where's Destiny streaming? I think it would be great if he started streaming on on YouTube. Oh, that's right. He's allowed on YouTube because he's a faggot. Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, whatever. Well, if he's allowed on YouTube, why would he come to Cozy? Yeah, it's dumb. Perhaps Cozy soon. Why would he come on Cozy when he has YouTube? Like, he's allowed on YouTube. Why? And also, why would he want to give Nick oxygen? Maybe I should shut up, because yeah, I should. I'm just
Ryan B sent $5. How do you like the new Cozy platform now that you're using it?
I think it's fantastic. It's obviously, like, it's a lot simpler than, Twitch, I guess, but like, who cares? And also, it's fantastic for me because, like, maybe there's like a lot of features that like veteran Twitch streamers use, but like for me, I would just be like confused and scared. but But no, this is a fantastic platform. This is this is like really amazing that Nick put this together. Also, I should bring this up just because like it's like a recurring thing. There was kind of a like, it's not that there was no beef between me and Nick a long time ago, but like the thing is, there was a beef between me and Nick a long time ago that was about the Thought Patrol thing that Nick was doing, which he doesn't do now, I don't think. And particularly something about Tara McCarthy, right? Who's like not around anymore. I think you can find her channel up still, but it's a dead channel. So, and that was like around the time Trump became president, or just before, or just after, or something like. So that was a long time ago. It was a Twitter spat. There haven't been any real spats since then. I don't have any real problem with Nick. Nick clearly doesn't have much of a problem with me. So just like, let's put the kibosh on like those ideas that there was ever like some big blood feud or something. Like that's retarded. Like, why would I have like, yeah, no. What was the deal with Tara McCarthy? Murphy, I literally don't even remember. But Nick is saying you are smelly on it. Is he streaming now? He's not streaming now. I thought he's 2 hours early, or 1 hour 48 minutes early. But was Nick saying that I was smelly on his stream? Well, if he's saying that, he has no way of knowing that. That's my defense. He has no way of knowing that. So, just wait until he starts calling you bad optics. Well, I don't know, man. I think the age of I think a lot of those optics arguments are increasingly obsolete. And frankly, in order to convince people of the things they need to be convinced of, you have to be comprehensive. You have to talk about everything, and you just sort of have to get over the bad optics. Back when censorship was less bad, it made more sense to sort of hide your power level. But now it makes a lot less sense. A lot less sense. How do you notice the gold name with the verified? How do you not notice the gold name with? Oh, Nick is in here. Oh. Guess I wasn't watching the chat. Well, Nick, how you doing? Where's your stream? Your stream's up. You got like a billion viewers.
Ryan B sent $5. Nick is in your chat right now, watching the stream. Don't let chat roll you up. Great stream.
Great stream. Well, stream. Yeah. I've used your talking points against Shitlibs quite successfully. Yes. I'm going live in an hour. Just 1 hour late, that's all? It's that African admixture that's causing you to, be a little slow for appointments, I guess. But all right. Well, I don't know. What else? He's busy watching me. He's busy watching my amazing stream. He's busy watching the cabin, seeing if something's going to come out. If you watch closely, maybe something will at the end. I don't know, guys. I don't know. We got jokes. Let's see, what else? So guys, this is since I lack the ability to actually entertain anything, you guys have to provide me a content. You are now the official content providers. That's what you do. So what was I talking about before? I was talking about something, and then someone sent a super chat, and then I started talking about something else. Oh, AltHype, I want to teach my kids with your videos. How can you prevent mainstream indoctrination? Well, obviously, like, homeschooling would be the way to go. And I've sort of been thinking about trying to set up, like, kind of a course, but it's not really meant to be like a course for kids, because for homeschooling, you have to teach them stuff, and then they take a test by the state. So you have to basically teach to the test to some degree. And if your homeschool kids go in and go to the test and be like, oh yeah, slavery wasn't actually that bad. In fact, they worked fewer hours per day than free white farmers. And in terms of corporal punishment, well, that was actually less important to them than the quality of the food, right? If they start saying stuff like that, they may not get very good grades. And so like the kind of thing I'm putting together is for adults, right? Yeah. Doing Collins would be smart. That would be a smart thing to do. Set up. Academic Agent makes courses there. Okay, another callback to the old data, to the deep lore. Does anyone remember Mr. Cropper? Or Cropper B. Like 10 points to anybody who remembers Mr. Cropper. Cropper B. Sounds painful. I doubt anybody remembers him. That is some deep lore. Oh, Kill All Animals. You remember Cropper B. What was he? I want to verify. You watch Cropper B still? Does he still make videos? No way. You watch Mr. Cropper all the time? You're lying. You're lying. That's what I thought about when you said Academic Agent is making some course. I remember Academic Agent was like kind of... He had something against like hereditarianism for some reason. I don't know what that was all about, but apparently he did. So, AltHype, I really like your video about the Belgian speech rate. You're the one saying Leopold wasn't Satan. Yeah. Notice how like when you have like all these big megadeaths, like they come in like places and times where like population records are very sparse. Right, like and you don't get more sparse for population records than the frickin' it wasn't even the Belgian Congo then. It was called the Congo Free State, and it was a wholly owned subsidiary by Leopold. And so that right, and of course during wartime, like the Armenian quote unquote Armenian genocide, which I haven't looked into, but of course, given what I know about other so-called genocides, I'm a skeptical Sam about the Armenian genocide. Although the Armenian genocide, that's not part of the oppression arc. That was something that was sort of hyped up during World War I, so it was kind of a big deal then. And so it's not really on the front burner because Turkey is not really a target of anything. If Turkey ever becomes a target, if Turkey say aligns with Russia, which would be bizarre, but hey, stranger things have happened, then you might start seeing a whole bunch of Armenian genocide propaganda. And I am no fan of Turks in general. I am not a fan of the Turk, but I think my suspicion is that it didn't happen. No one has died ever. Yes, actually, the world started. Inanimate Animus. I don't know if you know this, but you are actually the only entity that exists. Like you're creating the whole world around you. Like that kind of suspicion you had when you were like a while ago, when you were like a little kid. That kind of suspicion you had, like, what if I'm the only thing that exists and everything else is just a construct of my imagination? That actually is true. And I'm right here to tell you right now that is true. I am just a function of your imagination. Right? I am just in your brain. You're actually in a vat right now. So just letting you know. I mean, you might as well just go along with it, and just do it. Just make your dreams come true and have fun in the simulation. There's no real point to it, so yeah, have fun. AltHype, you should get some mods in here. I don't know. Nobody's saying anything that bad, and when they say stuff that is like that, I just don't want them talking about. Like I just delete them, and it was only like 2 guys, so there's not really a whole lot of. I don't see there's any real need for mods, and nobody's posting like weird links everywhere or whatever. But I can post a weird link. Actually, I won't. It's not porn, but it's just kind of a weird, creepy site that's like in the bowels of Web 1.0. Just ban everyone. Yeah, no chat allowed. Yeah, so there's been no need for mods yet. If chat gets like really shitty or more people start talking about like, Ryan, are you still gay? Then yeah, I'll get mods, whatever. All right. I was a donator to Mr. Cropper. I loved his homeschooling, and he had a brief stint making videos again. He's still one of the only good educational channels on YouTube. I'd actually love it if Nick gave him a channel. He deserves it. Mr. Cropper. That is a blast from the past. Let me see if I can find him. Mr. Cropper. Actually, let me... yeah, there's Is it Mr. Cropper or Brandon Cropper? Let's see. Well, he has a video from 9 months ago. I don't know. He's 9 months ago, 1 year ago. Well, he still seems to be around. Oh, and he has something about like construction thing. Is this his Elysium? Did he actually build his Elysium? I'm looking for kill animals in the chat here. I'm actually interested in Mr. Cropper. Does he still wear a suit in every video? I don't know. Hey, the cool kid clubs are experimental. Oh, I don't know why he had to bring in the cool kids clubs with Wignats here. Medicare has declined to join Cozy several times. Why? Why? Cozy looks like... I mean, like, the issue with, like, platforms is banning. Like, that's the issue. Like, so I don't know why. I don't know. Does he just, like, not like Nick? I see you in the chat. Because he's retiring soon. Medicare's retiring? Retiring from what? Barely makes any content. Like, in my sort of like state right now where I'm like not making much content at all, I'm making way more than Medicare. Paul Town, didn't you post pics of your bar mitzvah on here? Send to someone else. I'd like to know why Leopold was framed for mass murder. It would help convince people of the truth. You're right, Supreme Gentleman. In that video, I did not go into that enough. I made like a passing mention to that, but I did not. So if I was going to do that again, I would redo it, and I would add that. I would add like a bunch of stuff on, and it's already been done. It just needs to be collected and collated and organized in a proper way. Because in my opinion, people don't know how to present things in a good, persuasive manner. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That's how I would do that. So I'm gonna write that down here. Leopold. Why framed? Oh, he has cancer. Okay, well, that's gonna be. Cozy has a smart new user base because Paul and Ryan are a couple of bigger streamers here. Paul, who's Paul? I don't know who Paul is. Elite platform. Yeah, I love you. FYI, Nick has explained that optics was never about content, rather cool and competent presentation. He uses this one Spencer event as a counterexample. He uses this one. Well, he could basically probably use any Spencer event as a counterexample. Yeah. Brian radicalized me. Yeah, I was talking about something. Yeah, does he have cancer? Does Medicare? That's really sad. Someone tell him to fast, because doctors won't tell him, and that's like radically effective against in dealing with cancer. Like, in fact, I would like to get into contact with him and actually show him studies about fasting. Fat, cancer, and an autoimmune. Oh, geez, that's crap. Kill Animal says, "This is a random question, but are you Fringe Elements?" Yes, I am. You reminded me of him. Oh, uncanny. Yeah, if you go to the old Alternative Hypothesis channel, the short URL is Fringe Elements. So the Alternative Hypothesis YouTube channel is the Fringe Elements YouTube channel. Another channel that I really miss is Libertarian Realist, who was the first one to red pill me on race a decade ago. That man, all these callbacks, all the memories come flooding back. Unfortunately, almost all of his videos are deleted. Yeah, that is unfortunate. But yeah, Libertarian Realist, he was a fun guy. He was a hoot. Do silly things, like he made like a board game. He was arguing with some guy who was like refusing to make an estimate on like, you know, what would the black-white IQ gap be if environments were equalized, and he says, "Come on, whoever it was he was responding to, take the plunge." And then he just like, and he says it in like a stupid way. He looks at the camera and goes, "Take the plunge," and then he runs off the pier and just like jumps into the water. Like that's the clip. I thought that was, I don't know why I thought that was funny. It's so silly and stupid, but he was so deadpan about everything, and that's what I kind of liked about Libertarian Realist. He was really a fun guy. We argued about something, I think. I forget what we argued about. Maybe it was about like anarchism. It was one of those like minarchist libertarian versus anarchist debates. Right, but then you talk to Ryan and says, "Well, here's how you solve defense in a polycentric legal order. You force people to pay a tax for defense. That's a state." Oh, okay. But so yes, those were those were those were times. Those were times. But I think what radicalized me into my anti-philosophy position was going on to Stickam. I don't know if anyone remembers Stickam. Holy shit. You remember Stickam. Yeah, that is a state. Oh, Poisepin remembers. Yes. Or excuse me, Posypin remembers. That's a state. That's a state. Oh, argument debunked. It's a state. Debunked. 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 You're embarrassing yourself. Quit while you're... Oh, you were talking to some other guy. There's like this argument in chat between two guys. Old fag alert, that's me. Yeah, it's amazing. I come on here, it's like, yeah, I'm like the elder statesman here at an old 32. Yikes, 32. And I'm like the old fart here. Like, yeah, intellectuals are cancer. Intellectuals aren't cancer. Looks like Michael needs to. Wait, is Paul Town? I can't. There's some arguments here. Do I need to? I don't know. Maybe I'll talk to Paul Town, whatever, what that's about. I don't know. I don't want to deal with people like talking about whatever. But yeah. What was it like living through World War II? What was living through World War II like, Ryan? Well, I could tell the bad joke. It was all in black and white. Haha. Let's see. Remember Coltane? Is this like the Memberberry stream? Remember Coltane? I think I called him Coltrane or something. I forget what it was. But yeah, I remember him, and I remember them talking about like, here's like the relation, and he was trying to say that like IQ, I forget what it was. It was weird. Like he was trying to do like IQ predicts like national GDP or whatever. And like I was saying, well, I think that's true, but you're like Sean and I did like a really autistic, like a really butthole response to him that was like unnecessary for some reason. I forget what it was. And like they got got really mad about it. I forget what that was. I totally forget what that was. That are like 12 years of internet history. Yeah, there's a lot of internet history. Here, whatever. Since I'll just mod Paul Town, and you can do whatever you want. Paul Town. Don't delete people or I'll unmod you. But okay, so I apologize in advance, Nick, for what I'm going to do for Mecca. Oh yes, remember Hannibal Barca? Dude, I have a funny story. If anyone remembers Hannibal Barca, I doubt that would be the case. That would be amazing if you guys remember Hannibal Barca or Hannibal the Victor. Everyone remembers Crowd T. Like Hannibal Barca. I remember in Hannibal Barca, he made like a video response to me. And it was like a 3-part thing. And so what he said is like, is that at the end of the video, at the end of the first video response to me, he said, "End of side A." Like it was some sort of cassette tape that you bought or something. But I remember in that response, what I did is I actually, and this isn't like, because I can't do this with like people, but like he was so stupid that what I decided to do is like, you know what? I have a guess as to what he's going to say. So I'm just not going to watch his video response to me, but I'm going to respond to what I think to what I predict his arguments will be. And I made that video response and nobody was the wiser about it. He had no suspicion that I hadn't watched his videos. None of the commenters had any suspicions. So as far as I know, I either correctly guessed or just nobody watched Hannibal's videos or whatever. That was a funny episode. But yeah, Pieface. Oh, that Pieface, his name Pieface. I remember. I remember he was saying something like we were talking about race differences in like morphology or whatever. And he came on and he basically compared male and female.
Anonymous sent $5. Would you be open to watching video responses on stream?
I wouldn't. The idea doesn't excite me. But let me finish this story about Hannibal Barca. Hannibal Barca made a video where he was like trying to debunk the racist on like differences in skulls or whatever. And so what he did is he compared like a European male and a European female. And he was going over all the differences between male and female. And then at the end of it and said, "So, do you think women are a different species?" It's just so like the funny thing is like on that video, even like his like the sort of YouTube atheists as they were at the time, back when YouTube atheism was a big thing, because like we're gonna get rid of religion and that's gonna make everything better, right? Yeah, we're gonna. Well, they did. Is everything better? No. But even they thought that was. Even they were like getting kind of like skeptical about Hannibal Barca on that. But yeah. Well, Thunderfoot was one of the less odious at the time. Like, believe it or not, like. As bad as Thunderfoot was, like, you haven't seen trash until you get to, like, in Mendham or Coughlin 666 or, I don't know, who are some other ones? Not Stardust. Stardust is like an MRA. Yeah, there was another really smarmy one. Yeah, but yeah, you can find some really god-awful YouTube atheists. And the thing is, it's so dated now when you listen to what they're saying, and they're just freaking hysterical about how bad religion is. Like nowadays, that just seems so retarded. Like, religion? Really? Like religion was a big threat to something? Who? I mean, it was just ridiculous.
Sauce Rooster Canine sent $5. Could you please talk more about the evolution of the white race and its various subraces, Med, Nor, etc.? Also, since there's a small minority of blondes in the Near East, do you think Near Easterners were originally whiter than they are now?
Yeah, that's something that doesn't really interest me, is sort of a fine parsing between like races. Like the thing is, okay. So,
Virginia Statesman sent $5. Have another Coke on me.
oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Virginia Statements. I've sworn off caffeine, but I'll have a non-caffeinated beverage on you. Thank you. No, South Rooster Conjun or Cornigan. Like the thing is, my whole shtick is it's all about the oppression narrative, right? Because my whole shtick is about deconstructing the oppression narrative, right? And the oppression narrative is slavery, segregation, colonialism, white privilege, and the Holocaust. Okay, it's all of those things. They all interact with each other. They all reinforce. And part of colonialism is things like Britain raped India, and of course, which kind of exaggerates, the worth of India, that they would be worth raping, or like the Belgian Congo thing. But like these aren't separate stories. They're all one, right? It's one narrative. It's one thing. Right, so it's not like you're saying, "Oh, the institutional nexus is wrong about all these individual things." No, it's not, because it's not all these individual things. It's a single story it's the same corruption that leads to the establishment of all these narratives on all these different things, and that's the point about race and IQ. It's about breaking. It's about trying to break these narratives. So all the like fine slicing of like, oh, this is Slavic, this is Nordic, oh, this is Irish, but what is Irish? Is Irish really the same as Scotch Irish, Ulster Scot, or whatever? I don't care about that, because the targeted group in the oppression arc is white people, okay, and they don't care about what brand. They don't care about the language or anything, right? And so basically, as you get further and further away from the oppression arc, I kind of don't care. It's also like, I talk a lot about IQ, but I don't actually care about like IQ. I don't ask people. I'm not, that's one thing that sort of happened in the past, is I make all these videos about race and IQ, and people then imagine that like I'm really interested in like racial classification schemes. I'm not, or that I'm really interested
Tyrone
in IQ,
Frankston
which I'm
sent
not.
$5. Have some lean whitey.
Have some lean, Whitey. Lean, is that a real thing? I saw like some. I don't know if it was a South Park thing. Lean. Oh, it's a drug. Well, you only live once. A spoonful of promethazine codeine. Promethazine codeine syrup, showing the characteristic purple color. Oh. Well, sure. $5, is that enough to buy or make some lean? I'll have to look that up, what that is. 85% lean? No, I am not 85% lean. I still have a ways to go. But I am presentable in public now, at least. How is he so innocent? So yeah, pour up the scissor. Wait, is it just cough syrup and codeine? I mean, like, I've had cough syrup and I've had codeine. Now I actually had like in high school, I had a dislocated shoulder, and I used codeine for the thing, and I ended up not using it all, and so I ended up selling it at school. So I guess I was technically a drug dealer. This is funny to think.
Anonymous sent $5. Ever done psychedelic drugs?
No, but I have. But you know who has done psychedelic drugs is Sean Last. he actually made it a point to basically try every psychedelic drug like that there is. He's done LSD. He's done some form of shrooms. What else? What's that South American one? What's that like South American thing where you drink it and like you put and you puke or something? I forget the name of that. I thought NGL. I thought this was Sean last. Yeah, we sound so much the same. Ayahuasca. That's what it was. Yeah, but I don't think. Yeah, that may have been what it is. I don't know. Used to watch it years ago. Appreciate your German-based content. German-based content? What does that mean? I don't know what German-based content means. I love heroin. Yeah. I would be surprised if Sean comes on to Cozy, given his current line of work. But he has been going around doing debates here and there, popping in there. So maybe he would. German-based content. I was a racist before I did acid. I'm still racist. No, you took acid and you had a vision that said, "You are not racist enough. It is wrong how low your racism is. Increase the racism for morality itself." So yeah. But okay, I guess that's yeah, we'll give some time before my stream and Nick's stream, and that'll be that, because I think the chat's starting to go off into crazy directions here, and I'll just end the stream here. And if there's like one last super chat, obviously I want to read that, but otherwise I am out. So I'll see you out.